What's minasan, McMegane here, and today we answer a question. What is the best reverse unit aesthetic wise if you put them in a tier list? And yeah, unlike normal tier lists that I normally do to cover a lot of like gameplay stuff, like how useful the card is, how fun the deck is, this gonna be extremely subjective and very heavily reliant on the aesthetic. So before we go into like actual list itself, I want to give out a few rulings, as I think reverse unit has very interesting rulings to it because it's essentially an inverse of a unit that already pre-exists. Like for example, Battle Sister Fromage with Heretic Battle Sister Fromage reverse. So essentially it's a reverse of a card that we already know and love, and I want to judge how good of a card they are, like in terms of like how well it represents an inverse of this particular unit. I think it would be fair and it would be very interesting, because if you put that particular criteria in, things can change quite drastically.
No, he's got a point.
So yeah, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, consider like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I upload Vanguard content as much as possible. I do stream every Friday, so if you guys want to see some of the Vanguard shenanigans, do come visit me on Friday as well. So without further ado, let's get into the very first reverse unit, Ramiel Reverse. So this is a unit one of the cases where I really like the design. It does a little bit too much, and I think this is just a problem with a humanoid reverse unit, and yes, I'm putting her in B tier because of that problem. The fact is that if you compare Ramiel Reverse and Ramiel, the normal one, I will put the image up, you will notice that if you take out the scissor blade, which is like her signature weapon, you don't feel like they are kind of the same person. I mean, like when I say that, I mean like the way she dresses is just way too different, and because of that, it's just hard to differentiate between Ramiel Reverse and Ramiel and like find a connection to it, And because of that, I feel like this is one of those cases where they went a little bit overkill with the design, but it does pay off in terms of like likability. It doesn't pay off when it comes to whether it is a good reverse unit or not. And with that in mind, I put it in the B tier. Oh, by the way, aesthetics does play more weight into this, so just so that I can at least like push some interesting unit up there, I guess. Okay, so we have Maelstrom Reverse, and this is one of the cases where I feel it's a pretty damn solid unit. Like, I think, yes, it does go overkill, it doesn't feel like Maelstrom, but it's still within the theme of Maelstrom being a dragon with like some kind of heavy armory attached to it, and this one just literally just take it to 11. With the reverse design and everything, they're cut out pretty nicely. The only reason why I don't put it in the S tier, because let's be real, this particular V style art does look very S tier, is that I want to deduct it for the fact that it's not reversed enough. If you put the two cards, and in this case there are three different forms together, you may notice that they looks very different from one another. And as we all know, this is essentially like a Maelstrom clone, or like slash a failed experiment kinda. It's just it fit the lore, but if you don't care about the lore, it doesn't feel like Maelstrom enough, at least in my opinion. Okay, we come to Amon Reverse, and this is gonna go S tier, guys. Without my bias toward Dark Arilla, I love this card a lot. It fit everything well with the theme of like just inversing a unit, and they nail it pretty well, to be honest. Like inverse the color and have a two different color tone which cut quite nicely, and add additional arms to it. It's such a simple addition to it, but it does so well, and because of that, I just love the card so much. Like, even if the card is bad in actual gameplay wise, I'm still willing to run it just because that's how much I love the design. Okay, Dayusha Reverse, and this is gonna be an interesting case because I'm a fan of Super Robot Tyson, and this does scratch the it quite well, but I'm gonna judge it hard. In terms of design, I will give them like a solid 4, but when it comes to whether reverse properly or not, I would say he's in the same tier as Ramiel.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Here's the thing, I like all the change they do with the physical design of Dayusha Reverse, like change blue to black and change like a crown into like a pirate hat for some reason. The problem I have the most, at least in my opinion, is just the mask. It's kind of like, just how to put it, if the original Dayusha mask, I would have been okay with it, but the fact that they come up with different masks and it just take away what you recognize Dayusha as. Like the only reason you're gonna not recognize Dayusha is just the shades, and that's kind of like a case where the design decision kind of failing on this case. And yes, I know the original Dayusha face doesn't look evil enough, but if you just put the red eye like this one does already, can look pretty evil. You can make a good looking you can make a good guy robot like design face to look evil by just simply change the color tone, and this is one of like such a good solid design just fell flat by one element that I just don't like a lot. Okay, next up we have Grand Blue Coquetos Reverse, and this is gonna be the first C tier. It's pretty meh. It's pretty meh in terms of I do enjoy what they bring with this particular unit, as it does have like a color reverse, and that additional red to the design really pops out very nicely. And surprisingly enough, it gave a different vibe to Coquetos, and that's what you need for the reverse unit. It still feels like Coquetos because, you know, Witch Doctor and everything. I just not the biggest fan of this design. I think it just, the base is already not my biggest cup of tea already, but they at least did a good job following up this design, so I gotta give you a props for it. Okay, next up we have Himiko, and Himiko is gonna be on like A tier, but like on the low A to B tier, like it's in the middle of these two. So the reason why I'm not the biggest enjoy Himiko a lot is because there is a lot of element in this design that really tickle my fancy a lot. Like for example, with how they use the tiara on her head and make it into such that like it looks like a horn. It's actually really smart because, you know, Oni is kind of like representation of evil in many of the Japanese folklore, and a lot of the design and the air about it of her changed a lot, like from just being very serene unit into like mother energy like Ara unit. So this just does very well. Yes, the color scheme and everything does feel similar to Ramia, but I feel like this at least you still feel like, hey, this look like a reverse of Himiko. They still keep most of the detail very well, but just make enough adjustment not to go overkill like Ramia is. Okay, next up is Leopold Reverse, and this is S tier. I'm okay. I'm quite a fan of Leopold original design already, and they decided to slap 211 with Leopold Reverse, which is really nice touch. And I think yes, Beast Reverse seems to be having an easy way out because all they need to do is just reverse the color palette, add a few more pieces of armor. But the fact that it popped out this well, it's just really great. And I would say both of the original design and like the current design V is just really epic. And I'm glad like in the V version they did include a few more rings which cut very well, and it does fit the theme to an extent, in a sense that he is just berserker in the beast form. So really great unit. Next up, this is Gold Paladin Spectral Droop Dagon, and this gonna be extremely controversial because I know there are a lot of Spectral Droop stand out there, but to me, I'm sorry friends, what the fuck? This is by far one of the worst reverse design I have ever seen. Here's the thing, if you talk about aesthetic wise, it's still Spectral Dupe is look great. Here's a problem. Does Spectral Dupe and Spectral Dupe Dragon look any different from one another? Like, I'm not gonna take the excuse of adding rings and change the color palette.
Why you boring me? I'm right.
Make him look like a reverse unit. Like, there are so much potential you can do with this unit when it comes to reversing it, and they kind of just botch it quite harshly. I mean, if it's just me, I would just completely change the black armor into white one, or like maybe like dark gray or something, like something that make that like highlight the word dupe of Spectral Dupe Dragon more. And that is why that is the harshest criticism I have with this card. Like, it felt too much like a color swap Spectral Dupe, which is not really, and I'm not saying this in a nice way. Okay, next up we have Rebirth, and this kind of fall in a similar tier, I guess.
Nani?
Still better than Spectral Dupe, but I would say Rebirth does have a lot of similarity with like the end. Like, it's like a chunkier the end.
Damn, boy, he's thick.
And that's pretty much about it. And yes, ring make it pop out, especially with the background, but I would say there's not much design difference. I know it's fitting the theme, but I think it fit the theme a little bit. Sorry, it fit the lore a little bit too well for me. Okay, DDD. Dominate Reverse Dragon, and this gonna go just in the A tier. I think this is one of the cases where swap the color palette actually helps a lot, as it does show a different side of Dauntless very nicely, and that additional red scheme added to like just ring and like different power of his body is really nice touch. And the fact that they actually bothered to convert the color palette actually really stand out. This is one of the examples where Spectre could have learned from, you know, like the original Dauntless is red and gold. This became black and silver, which stood out really nicely. Okay, next up is Cradle, and this is one of those interesting cases where there is no unit that was like pre-reverse or after reverse. And I'm gonna say, like, as much as this is like as boring as reverse, I mean, I think it's partially also because there's not much we know about reverse Cradle, but the fact that it got overshadowed so much by Glendios just shows that like how boring the card is. It just exists to be like a grade 3 reverse for Link Joker, and that feels like its purpose right now. So yeah. Okay, by the way, Glendios will not be a power reverse, so I'm just gonna put it down here. I apologize, I accidentally added him in. Okay, we have Giraffe reverse, and this, I'm not the biggest fan of the design. Like, he's better than Coquitas, but I'm not the biggest fan of Giraffe reverse. Here's the thing, change color palette can actually give a different air to the character. This does that, but it does in a worse way possible because it doesn't look like an insect. It felt like an alien instead, like a Link Joker unit. I know reverse is like add Link Joker element into different clan, but this just too close to Link Joker for my taste. Like, if you don't see the legs, you feel like, oh, is this a Link Joker unit? That kind of feeling, you know. So yeah, like Giraffe reverse, so close to perfection. It's just too much of a reverse, kind of ruined the design, at least for me. Okay, next up is Daisuke Izuka Sensei, first reverse unit, Haki Walk reverse, and I'm gonna be quite harsh on this one because this is a C tier. If you're comparing it with the normal Haki Walk, you can kind of see which one was designed first. And if you compare just the two designs together, I would say it's pretty okay. Like, the element that it does added to it, like different armor pieces, and the additional of rate actually helps the unit a lot. Actually, with that consider, I'll shift it to low B, sorry. That element that Izuka Sensei decided to add and replace during the design of the Haki Walk really differentiate the card pretty nicely. But I think what makes this card not my favorite is the fact that it adds just enough to felt like a reverse, but I feel like it could have gone a little bit more, and that's why I leave it at B tier, I guess, like low B tier. Okay, next up we have Whirlwind Saber reverse, and yeah, this is a S tier, like no doubt. Here's the thing, I think like Whirlwind Saber Dragon is already pretty plain of a unit, and reversify it actually makes sense when it comes to, and the decision of that the artist went through reversifying it actually makes a lot of sense. Like, few more pieces of armor to make it look a lot stronger, and that reverse ring really pops on this one. Like, a lot of time reverse ring doesn't really pop in a lot of the units. This one really pops nicely, and it really fit well with the theme of reversing, and I think they did a really good job with the very first reverse unit ever released in Vanguard's history. Okay, next up we have Venus Trap. In case you don't know, this is the first Neo Nectar reverse unit before Cecilia reverse, and I like this card a lot. Like, I'll put it in A tier, I guess, higher than Maelstrom. The only reason I would deduct is because of how the designer take a little bit easy way out when it comes to designing her reverse version, Muse. But I think his choice of color palette is really nice. Like, it gave a two different vibe very well, and this is one of the example of like good color palette will just give different air to different character. And this is the most annoying part, is that she looked exactly the same. Like, her color hadn't changed, her skin color retained the same color, and this managed to give a two very different feeling character, and that is really nice. Same thing with Cecilia. Cecilia case, I will put it S tier. Like, this is one of my favorite humanoid design. Yes, it does look similar, but the fact that they replaced green with red and turn all like a very nice flowery element into a thorns, it's just a genius, and they make it red, which fit the reverse theme so much more, and all the underlying detail of this unit is just really stood out really nicely, and by far one of my favorite unit of all time.
Nice.
Okay, ethics reverse, and this is a little bit of a hard case because it does have some armor change, which is really nice. It still felt it's like one of those units where like they actually bother to redesign the armor to make it different, and the color theme going into it is pretty nice. And with all that considered, I'm gonna rank it like high B, sorry. Like, I don't know why, I think over time I just felt the Ethic Buster Reverse just doesn't really stand out too much when you compare it to like the better unit in this tier. And yeah, I feel like it could have done a little bit more, I guess, and that's why like I would put it in B tier. Like when it comes to reversifying it, it's got a high score. It's just that the design wise, I feel like it could have done a little bit more to make it really pop. And I don't like the V version or color scheme also. Like I prefer the original one. Okay, next up is Pegasus Storm Reverse, and this is one of the case where I'm gonna put this into a C tier. Like it did a good job reversifying it, but I feel like it take an easy way out. I will put the Emperor Reverse in the same tier as well. It's just like they just add reverse element to it, and that's pretty much about it. And the only reason why I rank these lower than higher than Spectral Dupe is the fact that at least it gave a very different feel for to these two characters, while Spectral Dupe still feel pretty much the same. Okay, from Reverse, and yeah, it's there. I've just found recently, but I'm quite a big fan of like a nun's character in card games and like story in general. And the idea of reversing a nun is, I wouldn't call it sacrilegious, but like it's a very interesting idea, and I think they did a pretty good job with this one, cause like they still maintain like the nun element of fromage, but it just gives enough element to make her feel extremely different. I would say like the only critique I have with this card is that why not keeping the blonde hair? I feel like making her blonde would make it stand out, though they will look a bit too similar to Astro Reverse, which might be the reason why they decided to keep different hair color, but I'm not complaining. Like, it's still a great design. I love it a lot. Okay, next up is Lequia Reverse, and this will go in the same tier as Himiko, like low A tier. Here's the thing, I love the theme about circle of life of Lequia, starting off with black hair, then reverse got red, then after that she turned to Venus, which has white hair. I like this like the story a lot, and this is a very solid design. I just feel like compared to the unit that's in the higher tier, she felt a little bit fall flat in certain area, and yeah, that's why I feel like A is still a very good tier for her, but she's not S material. I'm sorry, Lequia fans. Okay, next up is Ashley Reverse, and this is high B. Like, to me, the element that they add to Ashley is very nice, but I feel it does take a little bit easy way out, because Royal Paladin in general is already a clean clan, like in terms of like story wise and everything. Making a reverse unit out of a Royal Paladin clan is just not that hard. I just feel like they could have added a little bit more element into it. I feel like add a bit of black into this design would just make it really much better, because she's a broken heart knight. You know, like just a little bit of black, not complete black, like just add black accent onto her clothes. Aside from like the reverse ring, will really pop. And I think I might rank her a lot higher if that's happened. Okay, Spino Driver Reverse. It's hard one, but I'm not surprised that I'm gonna rank him here. It's same case as like these two. Like they just add reverse link for the sake of adding it, and is it me or this card felt thinner than the original Spino Driver? maybe it's just me. Do comment down below if you guys feel the same way. But yeah, it's just like a lazy way of like reversifying the unit. I feel like some of the newer reverse unit is the like last minute commission that Bushiroad gave to these artists, and they tried their best to come up with the unit with the theme that they were given, and they did a pretty okay job to it. But I feel like compared to the higher tier, these lower tier reverse unit are just doesn't stand a chance. And we come to the last, and in my opinion, one of the best design of a reverse unit, Raging Fall Dragon Reverse. And this is S tier. I will rank it below from March for one reason only. Izuka Sensei has two chances on making a reverse unit. One was Haki Walk, and I think because of the fact that he learned how to play around with like a reverse unit, that's why like Raging Fall was such a good follow-up to his previous work. And let's be real, this still gives like a Raging Form Dragon vibe to it, but a lot more evil, and I love it. And yeah, that's pretty much the tier list. I apologize if I babble it a little bit too long for this this video. But what are your favorite reverse unit, and how you going to rank each of the reverse unit in this tier list? Do leave down in the comments below, or maybe just share it with me on the Twitter social. I did put my Twitter handle up in my top right corner, so you guys can go and follow me if you want to. And yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is McMegane signing out.